Hey guys, and welcome to week 3 of Contextual Electronics session 1B. It's just me and Dave here today, but we'll talk a little bit about the project. And I should probably grab my board actually, but so far we've been going through, if you've been following along, the latest build was, or the latest module was the adjustable power supply. Got through all the issues associated with that, and we're moving into testing that and then installing more of the power supply today and tomorrow. And so by next week we should be good to go with power throughout the board, and we should be able to check all those different things. So yeah, so we should be good there. I'm also gonna, if anyone does show up, I am gonna open up the Q&A app as well. So let me grab this board. Let's see. Wait. I'm gonna pull this off the desk. Here we go. All right. So this week we've been working on the board, and the latest video we did the terminal blocks. We installed those, all of the adjustable power section, the potentiometers, and prior to that was the filtering and the protection circuitry back here. So this stuff's been going pretty well so far. Dave, what have you thought? I mean, in terms of build and everything else.
Yeah, it's gone pretty good. You know, it's interesting to kind of see, kind of see some of the mistakes that you don't have to make. If you lag behind a little, you can kind of be a little lazy, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like I go to work and it's like, oh, I wish I could do my board, and then I get home and it's like, oh, good thing I didn't do my board.
Oh, because of mistakes that you get to watch me do.
Yeah, it's nice. It's like we get to make all the mistakes and not have to suffer any of the consequences.
That's right. Yeah. So it's a little bit easier than it might be otherwise, but that's probably a good thing. It can be tough. Yeah, and there are more coming up. Like I've already seen some potential issues here, and we'll get into those in the coming weeks. Have you had any issues with your build?
Just stupid things I've done myself. Just today, I decided to try to catch up, so I put on the linear regulator, or I put on all the circuitry for the linear regulator, and got done with all the SMD soldering, and was like, oh yeah, let's hook it up. And I didn't see anything, and I'm like, oh, what's going on here? And then I realized I never actually put the regulators on. I just did all the hard stuff first.
Nice. Well, that's a better mistake than putting them on and blowing them up. So that's okay. Take the good with the bad in that case.
I did almost blow them up though.
Yeah?
I had another instance of trying to guess what the terminal block positions were.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I think this one's ground, and I hit it with the continuity tester, and it beeped, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's ground, and I hooked it up, and it wasn't ground, it was 3.3 volts, and I started shorting it directly to a real ground through my test system, and I was sitting there, and I'm like, I kind of picked up the board a little, I'm like, it's kind of warm over on this end, and I touched the 3.3 volt thermistor and almost burned my finger.
Man.
It was about 150 and climbing.
Well, that's good though. That means it worked. That's what it's supposed to do, right?
Yeah. But yeah, those things get hot.
Yeah, that's how they work. Yeah, so that is a good point though. If you do have a current limiting condition, it can be problematic.
Yeah, you might feel or smell it before you know about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sad I didn't get video of me smoking these potentiometers. That was a boneheaded move on my part. I was kicking myself because they're kind of hard to get out of there too. And I actually ended up, so I had another board as well that I was working. So I've been doing 2 boards obviously. On the other one, I put the wrong capacitors on when I was doing the video last night, and then I cut them off. Right, you just use the diagonal cutters and just snap them off of there. And usually that works great for me, but this time for some reason I ripped all the traces off too. So that board's done for. I mean, I could fix it, but I've got a couple. So yeah,
that's kind of an important thing I guess that should be mentioned is that when it comes down to it, always sacrifice the component.
instead of the board.
Yeah, it's hard, but sometimes you have to make the call like, this part's cheap, and I might screw up the board. Just take a
Yeah.
pair of cutters to it and c'est la vie.
Right. Right. Instead of heating up the board and possibly messing up a trace or something like that. That's a good point. Speaking of boards, there's one or two people that have still not gotten their boards. One was in Brazil. They were all overseas. So if you haven't gotten boards yet, please do let me know, and we'll make sure those get over to you. With some of the like Brazil, I had talked to Osh Park in the past, and he said that it's very likely that those boards get held up in customs, unfortunately. So even setting a second set of boards, it's just as likely those will get caught up as well. So I'm not sure what to do with that stuff. But if there's anyone else who still hasn't gotten theirs, please let me know. We don't want you to fall too far behind. I honestly think a lot of this stuff could be done pretty quickly. I mean, it took us a while because I was explaining a lot of it, but I think if you're kind of just going through running tests, I think it is very doable. What else was I going to say about this stuff? Upcoming with this stuff, right? So the stuff that is already on there, right? We have the, I got kind of antsy and I put on I wanted to try out the heat sinks on the LM317s and stuff like that, and those seem to go in. They were a little bit off. You can see there's this weird bend here that I had to do, but we're actually gonna have to rip those off anyways, because if you really look at it, the difficult component, right, the SSOP, that's kind of right in line with that thing. I didn't even think about that. It's like right there. So we'll need to probably remove those. So if you haven't done those yet, you can always wait on those if you want to, or you can try and put them in. I think they look kind of fun. So.
Yeah, when I saw you mention that the other day, I decided to try bending the leads of the package instead.
Uh-huh.
And that seemed to work pretty well. I took a bunch of pictures. I'll upload later.
Okay. So
yeah,
like
I put
the regulator just kind of going back like this, like that way.
Yeah. The heat sink's in its like original silk screen position, and the regulator feet are just bent back.
Okay, so that works if you don't. I think you need to do that up front, right? Because I shoved the regulator all the way down to where the taper is on the leg, and that's like all the way down. Or did you do that as well?
Yeah, what I did is I shoved them in the heat sink first, and then I bent them over all the way at the bottom.
Yeah.
And then I bent them again after the fat part, so I kind of have like a 90-degree bend.
Yeah, it does like one of these.
90s. Yeah. I was worried I might destroy it, but I had a couple extra regulators, so I figured, what the heck.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to do it. And maybe when I move stuff back, that might be a good way to redo it. Yeah, that was just a mistake on my part. I mean, like when we did this layout, I didn't put I don't know why I didn't put it further back. I even drew it out pretty well. I mean, like it seems to match up pretty closely, but everything about it, and I think someone even warned me about it, but for some reason, it didn't click. So, yeah, there is some potential problem there, but c'est la vie, right? I mean, this is just how it happens. So. We'll be able to fix that stuff, no problem. And like I said, this is all a good learning experience as well in terms of this is a prototype, right? This is early stuff. There are already some changes. I do need to start a list of changes. It's always a good idea as you're going through, as you're testing stuff, keeping a running list so that when you go to do Rev B, right? And if we have time, we can do that. We can go back and make changes to the board and change the GitHub repo and stuff like that because we want the most recent version to be up there. If we do all that stuff, or if we keep track of all of it, it's easy when we actually go back and do the board changes. So.
Yeah, I found something like that today where it's like it's not a big deal, but it's like if I made another one, I'd change it as I went to put knobs on the pots, and you can't. They hit.
These pots here?
Yeah, the pots are too close together to put knobs on them, or at least any of the knobs I had.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. What kind of knobs do they? I guess you don't have a camera today, but yeah, if you could post pictures of those too, that'd be good. Because you're right. That's a usability thing where that's easy to do. It's just dragging it over a little bit, but that can make a big impact for an actual productized version of this if that ever happened.
Yeah, I just kind of cruise the e-waste pile at my work, and whenever there's something with a knob on it, I just pop it off.
Nice. That's a good way to do it. Junk collecting is a very necessary hardware engineering hobby. The old junk box at my old job is awesome. I get so many
Yeah,
components from that.
if both feet are not off the ground, then you're not dumpster diving.
I like that. That sounds like a good T-shirt. So Jim asked over in the Q&A section, I'm learning a lot and don't mind the oops moments. That's good because they're going to keep happening. Uh, question is, have I already built this? Have I, Chris, already built this project and have I seen it finished? No, I have not actually. So we're doing this all live together. You might think, oh, well, what have you been doing with all that time in the middle between session A and session B? And the answer was a lot of other stuff. So yeah, so we're kind of discovering this stuff all together. And I kind of wanted that too, right? If it's kind of just me walking through it and being like, oh, well, you see this or you see that, it might be a little bit better. You know, you can see some of the stuff coming, and I might be able to warn you about it, but then we won't necessarily get all the bodge wires and mix-ups and everything here. So, yeah. So I think we'll keep seeing some oops and we'll finish the project together, or the product together rather. So I'm excited about that. And I hope it works. And if not, well, you know, that's why it's modular too, right? So that's another thing, is that, you know, assuming the whole relay circuit didn't work, right? That would suck. That would be bad. But assuming the whole thing didn't work, and we found that out during the build, well, what do you do when that happens on a regular project? Well, you leave it, and then you start making changes. Either you do bodge wires on here, or you go and reprototype it on like a separate circuit board or something like that. And basically, you get it done and you roll it into the next version. And that's a very realistic kind of thing, and that's kind of what we're going to be doing here. And it's just something you have to learn. Now, the interesting thing will be what happens when I re-spin this course, right? Because at that point, I will have already done all this stuff, and I think that'll be a different experience. I think you guys will get a little bit more of a benefit from me doing it at the same time, right? And I think that's going to be a little bit better. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to wait until the next session or the next round of me doing this kind of stuff. So, any other issues, Dave? I mean, how's the pace been going?
Yeah, it's good. You kind of are like more videos, and then they pop out, and you're like, whoa. So I think it balances out well.
Right. So more videos is good or bad?
Well, it's like I want more videos, but then getting the spare time to keep up is hard. So I think the pace is good.
Okay.
It's
yeah,
a weird,
I know what you mean. Yeah, you
yeah,
don't
it's like a weird
expect it, but when it's
combination.
there, right?
Yeah, it's like you want more, and you watch them, and you're like, oh yeah, that'll take me 10 minutes, and then you finally get out, on the workbench, and 3 hours later, you're like, okay, that took a little longer.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's definitely less. Like I look at it, I was like counting up the videos yesterday. I'm like, oh, it's only 10 this week so far. But then if you look at like bench time, and everybody has to watch it and then also do it, right? And it's like, and hopefully people are also doing it. You could just watch. That would, be okay, I suppose. But yeah, it's hopefully everybody wants to continue to participate along and do the build logs and stuff like that. How have you liked the build logs? Is that working a little better for community involvement this time?
Yeah, I like the build log. Hmm. Yeah, I mean it's a little chaotic with the daily digest, but
Yeah.
it's like I don't know a way to make it better. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So in the beta group we did I had asked everyone to do a personal blog, right? And then we had an aggregator where it kind of just listed all the steps of what everybody was doing, and that was chaos too. I mean, like you said, I mean, I don't know any better way to do it. So if people do have suggestions, I am always open to them. But it's just kind of what we have to work with right now. So I do wonder if it would have helped for session 1A, right? I mean, so it would have been it was about 3 times as many people because only about a third went through from session 1A to 1B, and it would have been interesting because it would have been like the updates would have been like, oh, and I did this part, and here's my screenshot, and it looks just like it should. Okay, maybe that's not as interesting as here's the resistor and here's my soldering job, which is by definition going to look different than what Chris did on his bench. There's always something different when you get to the physical side of things. But on the digital side, it's like the best you can do is match what's on the screen, unless you're deciding to do it different by choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean the early part where you were kind of like, here's the specs, go find a part, and
Yeah.
I guess what was it, the execute, and there was like 2 videos, and so it was
Yeah,
kind of interesting to
context.
see. Yeah, it was kind of interesting to see like what other people had chosen, um, and then to actually see what was right. And then there was kind of that thrill when like you actually chose something that was right, or that you also chose.
Right, right. Yeah, I see. Yeah, and then that kind of ran out, right? And that's when a lot of participation kind of fell off in the forums in session 1A, was when we kind of just went to layout and was just like, all right, I got to do layout now, right? It's like, okay. So unless you're going to do a board that's, I mean, unless I do something where it's like, you should be doing a different board than we're doing, right? And then we have all of the comparisons, right? And seeing, maybe that's the real way to do it, is that have people not try and match what I'm doing, but to do something unique and better, hopefully, right? And then, yeah, so we'll figure that out for 1A in the future, or 2A probably would be a better example. Um, cool.
Yeah, I might have learned more, but I doubt I would have had a functional board.
Right. Well, yeah, that makes you wonder too. But I think about it with, like, how big this board ended up being. If someone would have been like, well, screw that, I'm going to make something smaller and more compact. That might have been beneficial to have someone else do that kind of thing. And we'll see coming up that there are some more mistakes on here that might have been caught as well. I've already found them. I don't know if anyone else has, but yes, I've already found them. So more fun to be had. This will not be a functional product out of the gate, so not completely functional at least. So, wah wah. Oh well.
It's a prototype.
Yeah, it's prototype, exactly. That's what it's supposed to do. Um, any concerns about the upcoming stuff?
Just that T-SOP.
Just the T-stop, yeah. Yeah, that is going to be a stinker. I'm worried how I'm going to video that thing too. But I think we'll be able to do it. I still get really worried. I have this neuroses from doing it wrong so many times, of like mistakenly putting the pins on wrong or something like that, getting to the point where I solder everything up and I turn it on and it's like womp womp, nothing works, right? And it's just because my footprint was wrong back in the day. Now hopefully everybody checking kind of helped with that sort of thing, but that's kind of a rough thing to assume as well. So yeah, it's just a fear of mine, and hopefully it did not happen.
Yeah, I feel like we probably got that right.
I hope.
The only problems we've had so far are like just physical type things, and really I think the PDFs are kind of to blame for a lot of that, because the dimensions are just not that great.
Oh, like on the components, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I actually was thinking about that yesterday. I have not measured with a micrometer yet, to verify which is wrong, because like the footprint for the stability side of the potentiometer, right? The mounting feet. That's it. The mounting feet were wrong, right? And then we had to either cut those off or trim them down to get those in there. And I actually haven't checked, because it is a possibility. It's unlikely, but there is a possibility that the holes were spec'd correctly, but they weren't made correctly. And I've yet to go back and actually check that. So that's probably something I should do. Because it is always good to just make sure that the board house is doing what you expect. And there is variability even across a set of boards, right? There could be different sizes and stuff like that, because it's not a precise, the electroplating process where they actually drill a hole and then plate it back. It's not always precise. It's usually within some range. So it is always good to check that kind of thing. Let's see. Nathan is posting in the Q&A section. When we do more of the testing with the scope, can you also show use of a reference signal from a higher spec scope? Aha. Yes, that's a very good idea, and I think I did promise that for the noise. It's still something I have to do for the LC circuit. Really, we didn't see anything on the Gabotronics scope, and already I'm starting to see the limitations of that. I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, it's got the built-in logic analyzer, and a lot of that stuff is interesting, the digital stuff. But you know, like even the fact that there's no AC coupling on the Gabotronics scope is a limiting factor, because when you want to look at noise, you really want to AC couple it so that so you have the dynamic range, and you can zoom in a lot more. Whereas if you don't have AC coupling, you know, it's up a little bit higher. As you amplify it, the signal kind of goes off screen. So um, let's see.
I
Jim
wonder if
is
that's
at
something we could do with a cap.
like on the input, you mean?
Yeah, I don't know if we have like a spare cap that would be a close enough value to do something like that.
Yeah, maybe. That's actually, yeah, it might be worthwhile. I think the real problem though, so that scope goes down to, I think it was 10 or 80 millivolts, right? So that's the lowest range it has, and then it has 8 bits of resolution. 80 millivolts is not. I mean, like you can get usually on most scopes you can get another 8x less than that, so you can get down to 10 millivolt range, and it'll be noisy, but you know, you can filter it then, and that's really that's kind of the thing where it's like, well, what are we using the scope for? We're using it for the big stuff, you know, is there signal coming through, what's the frequency, that kind of stuff, more so than, you know, looking at the very, very low level stuff. And we saw that as well, you know, you can utilize different functions within the Gabotronics thing, like the DMM on there. It wasn't DMM. He calls it meter, right? So the meter function, that kind of helps with that stuff as well. But yeah, it might be worthwhile to investigate that some more, to actually get a cap across there and see how it looks AC coupled. Let's see. Jim Stratton's asking schema question. At the top level, doing edit, find, looking for L1 doesn't find it in the schema, whereas L5 works. Huh. Well, that's interesting. I'm not sure. Let me see if I can. I'm pulling this up now. We can always go back over the. Who doesn't like going back to the schematic, right? There we go. All right. So on the top level, we got edit, find, L1. It seemed to work for me, so I'm not sure. You know, there are some weird checkboxes here, right? I've had issues with the find in the past, so that's L1 there. I've had issues with find in the past. I don't really know what the deal is. It could be your version of KiCad, right? I mean, like there's a lot of issues that could come up with that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's probably a Googleable problem there.
Yeah, I've had find be a little sketchy on me in the past too.
Yeah, I usually don't use it. I mean, like, but then again, it's like this is a relatively small schematic, whereas if you went bigger, you'd probably definitely want to use it. So, yeah. So, yeah, Jim, if you want to talk afterwards, we can try and work that out as well. Okay, so any other? Oops, I think I turned off the Q&A app. Sorry. Any other questions? Dave, anything else from you?
Oh, I wanted to mention the whole drawing a little circle on your bench. That I did that, and it's actually been really cool.
Yeah, you know, I actually didn't do that. I learned that from my last workplace. We used to have this like piece of wood that was underneath a microscope, right? Just kind of lift the whole board up, and someone drew a little box there, and that was what it was for. And so that was a great tip, right? I mean, like you kind of always know where to look, and if they're not there, then you're like, oh, I swiped those off the bench at some point.
Yeah, I started without it, and I was kind of like, you know, you get focused, you know, you get focused in on the board, and it's kind of hard to like unfocus your eyes and scan the bench looking for, you know, little component. And so that circle, you know, like you don't even have to like, you just kind of turn your head and you don't have to like readjust your focus.
Right. Yeah, and
It
it
really
can be
helped. I was
problematic.
shocked.
Yeah, it can be problematic if you had like, say, you had like 3 different resistor values that are all the same size too, right? You don't want to go and like, if you have nothing in the circle and then you're just using your regular bench, you don't know necessarily which part you're grabbing without actually going and, you know, putting in your head magnifier and checking that kind of thing out. So it can help with that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd put like 4 resistors down and it's or 4 caps down and it's like okay, I know that I need to put if I have one left in there, I know I did something wrong.
Yeah. Right. Right. That too. Yeah. Good point. I usually always end up having an extra one in there because I usually ping one off the bench. So.
Yeah, I laughed pretty loud the night I saw you ping the first one off.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's bound to happen again. As long as you don't do it with like the 3901, I think we'll be okay.
Oh yeah, that's a fun story. I did destroy a component.
Oh
I
yeah.
underordered the 22 microhenry inductors.
Oh, I saw you mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I borrowed one of the larger ones for the LED circuit, and as I was soldering it on there, apparently those things have a little bit of magnetism in them because it just stuck right to the tip of my iron.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So I thought, oh, I'm gonna burn it. So I tried flicking it off and cracked the heck out of it.
Yeah. And that was the end of that one.
I found it, but it was dead.
Yeah. These things happen. So coming up so like I said, we're gonna do this week. We're gonna finish up the power section here, right? So we're gonna finish up these. We'll put in the bypass doohickeys as well, like the little posts, to be able to do bypass. And so we'll test all that stuff out. And then next, I think we're gonna move to the relay section. And then after relay, we'll move to LED. And really, we're gonna keep the other stuff for last. I mean, we're moving a little faster than I thought we would, to be honest. I don't know why I thought it was going to take so long, but and I'm not sure why I thought taking 8 weeks to build one board would be an acceptable thing. But what we'll use that other time for is code and troubleshooting and fixing up the board for the next rev as well. So kind of all this stuff that we'll be doing for making sure things work. I mean, and even just the assembly and initial testing aren't necessarily the only thing we have to do. If you think about using a thermocouple and getting that working, there's going to be some tweaking in there, right? And testing and making sure and seeing, oh, why doesn't this work? Where's the signal going? That kind of thing. That can be a little bit more difficult. And then writing the code, talking to the parts, and all that other stuff. There's always the hardware doesn't stop when you start writing code. It's always the first rev stops when you start writing code, and then rev 2 starts immediately after, right? As soon as you're starting to do your next rev and figuring out, how's your hardware interacting with your software and that kind of thing. So we'll be doing all that stuff next too. So yeah, it's probably going better than I thought it would, but there's always room for improvement. We'll see how everything goes and how it all interacts as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to be learned about trying to keep software backwards compatible and dealing with like software revs and hardware revs and because you can load like a piece of software onto the wrong piece of hardware and damage the hardware.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to learn there.
Definitely, yeah. And unfortunately, I might not be the best person to teach that kind of stuff, but I do know some people that can help with that. So we'll be able to work with that, I think. Yeah. So any other questions, Dave? Or guys in the Q&A section?
Oh, that's it.
All right, cool. Well, this will all be posted to the YouTube account, and I'll be sure to link that in, and then I'll be doing more videos today. Oh, and I've been streaming from my lab, and I have a chat bot now. So if you're in the Amp Hour, I put it in the Amp Hour chat room, but I can also do it in the Contextual Electronics chat room. As I'm working, you can type into if you type in the chat box, I can hear it, and then you can I'll talk back to the camera, and then we can kind of interact like that while I'm doing work. And if you got questions and stuff like that, that's actually how Jerry used to work in her lab. So I kind of stole that idea from her. So it's fun. All right, cool. Well, thanks for showing up, Dave. Thanks to other guys in the chat and the questions and stuff like that. And we'll see you next week.
That's it.